All right, if I could call this meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. So welcome, and just want to acknowledge that the Northern Rockies Administrative Center is located in the heart of the traditional territory of the Dene, Cree, and Denisah people of Fort Nelson First Nation and Prophet River First Nation. We further recognize the rights provided by our treaty. We also celebrate the contributions and the enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Are there any additions, council? Staff? Seeing none. Are there any public that wish to make comment on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. All right, so before us tonight, hi, welcome. We have a petition from Banneken Consultants. So I'm going to give it to Krista. So Krista, if you could take it away and provide some introductions, that would be great.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, thank you for the welcome, and thank you for allowing this conversation. So as you've heard in the last council meeting, there was an informational report just providing a high-level introduction or overview of the things that we've been doing related to the tourism strategy implementation, as well as working with the TAC or the Tourism Action Committee to get their input and feedback on what may or may not be working and how they see it can better potentially be utilized as we transition into a new recruitment period. So Banneken and Camillo, who you can see on the screen, has been helping us along the way. And I'm going to turn it over to Camillo, and he has some questions and discussion that he'll lead council through just to get council's perspective on what their goals and what priorities are. And then our goal would be to bring back an updated terms of reference for your next meeting based on this discussion. So
Okay, great. Thanks, Krista. Yeah, before you pass it over, I just want to take like a very brief time to just let everybody know who's around the table. So Deputy Mayor Lorraine Gerwing. Leslie.
Councillor Leslie Dickey.
Councillor John Roper, hello. Scott Barry, CAO.
Erin LaVale, Deputy CAO.
Alicia Gregory, Communications Coordinator.
Jaylene McIver, Corporate Manager.
Councillor Brenda Anax.
Councillor Kyle Andrews.
Great, thanks. And we have some people in the gallery, just so that you know. So take it away. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Hello, Regional Council. Thank you for the quick introductions. Nice to see you all. Just confirming that you can see me and you can hear me okay.
We can, but I forgot the mayor is online, so.
Hello, Mayor.
I'm just, I just like taking over here, Mayor.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly all right. That's what you're for. Yeah, Rob Fraser, I'm the mayor.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. So
right,
I'm perfect. Before I light up the presentation, just to say thank you all for your time. It is a pleasure to be before all of you today and excited to facilitate some conversation and feedback from Regional Council. Like Krista mentioned, my name is Camilo. I've been the project manager on the implementation support for the tourism strategy that we've been working on with Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. You would have received a version of the recommendations that we are making when it comes to the Tourism Action Committee, transitioned into potentially another name. So I'll just share a presentation and we'll walk you through the recommendations and some group reflection around specific questions to gather your input and feedback. So just confirming that you can see the image that I'm sharing, the slide.
Yeah, we sure can.
Perfect, thank you. So just to start off with some introductions, I mentioned I'm Camilo Montoya Guevara. You can just call me Camilo. I am one of the partners at Banneken and the project manager on this project. As part of the project team, we also have Trevor Jonas Benson, and Caroline Morrow. And we are all part of Banneken. We're a small and proud Canadian consultancy. We work, we say, within and beyond travel and tourism, because we recognize that tourism is a sector that is connected to many other industries and sectors. Our work touches on agriculture, it touches on municipal planning, it touches on community planning, and that's definitely different perspectives and experiences that we look to represent and bring through the work that we do. I
Yeah, I'll
see
just-
the mayor
sorry.
has a hand. up,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll-
Yeah, so
Thank
I can't
you.
see I can't see the screen. Thanks. All I got
Okay,
is,
thanks.
yeah.
Okay, we will work on it.
Okay, thanks.
You're
okay.
welcome.
So I will carry on. If there's something that I need to do on my end, please let me know in terms of sharing or resharing the presentation. So in terms of the project, we started back in early in April, and then due to events within the Northern Rockies, we pushed the project back a bit more. But at the onset of the project, we set forth the goal that by the end of December 2024, as part of implementing priority actions of the tourism strategy, the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality would have delivered a set of 2 highly relevant and customized capacity building workshops for tourism businesses in the region, as well as revisited and refreshed the Tourism Action Committee's structure and supporting materials. Today, we are here to consider the second part of this goal, being the revisiting and refreshing of the Tourism Action Committee. But I would just like to know, and this would have been an update that Krista would have shared at your November 12th meeting, that the 2 workshops were delivered at the beginning of October. In terms of our work with the Tourism Action Committee, we've had a number of different engagements and conversations with current members. The first being on July 23rd, where our team, specifically Trevor and myself, facilitated a 1.5-hour virtual project introduction and strategy review session with the current TAC members, as well as Krista, being the Northern Rockies staff representative. So at this meeting, we had a total of 7 committee members who were present. And then this session focused specifically on exploring the TAC members' understanding, ideas, and expectations around the committee's role, responsibilities, and their individual engagement. The second engagement that we facilitated was an in-person 2-hour session focused on governance exploration in Fort Nelson. And at this meeting, we had 5 TAC members who were present, as well as Krista being the Northern Rockies staff person. And the goal of the second session was to explore how to maximize the value that the Tourism Action Committee can co-create with the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality through collaboration on tourism strategy, implementation initiatives, and really beyond the role that they see themselves playing as well. For today's Committee of the Whole and the time that we have ahead of us, I understand that I am the only delegate on the agenda, but I will be conscious of your time. So to keep us focused, there's 2 main objectives for our time today, that being to review the recommendations for revisiting and refreshing the Tourism Action Committee in conversation, and to gather input and feedback from Regional Council on the recommended changes to the Tourism Action Committee. Before I continue with the presentation, just want to check in, Mayor Rob Fraser, are you able to see the slides on your end now, or?
Yeah, I've got a picture in a picture, so it's small, but I can read it. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. I'll read through most of the things, but if there's anything that anybody needs me to repeat, please don't hesitate to jump in and just let me know. Now, I won't spend much more time in terms of context and updates around the project, because we definitely want to make sure that we're using the time with all of you today to focus on conversation. So with that in mind, I'm going to move over into just a review and discussion of the recommendations. All in all, there were 10 areas of recommendations that were made in our project report for the Involving Tourism Action Committee. All of these recommendations are informed by insights that were garnered through the research and engagement activities, specifically the 2 exploration sessions engagements that we had with the Tourism Action Committee members, one in July, one in October. And then just to give you an idea of also what follows after today's committee of the whole. We will be taking the feedback and input that you provide and revising the materials that are to be refreshed based on the recommendations that we've made and the additional input that you provide. So what you shared today will inform the development of the refreshed materials for the Tourism Action Committee. In terms of the first area of recommendation and discussion, I'll just slide up all the different recommendations and can take some time to read through them. Here we want to really, we've gone ahead and grouped together recommendations related to the mandate, objectives, and the guiding principles of the Tourism Action Committee. The first recommendation is to really, for Regional Council, to set a clear mandate for the involved committee, which would correspond to its authority and jurisdiction. We found through the research and engagement review of current materials, there is no clear mandate that specifies what the authority and jurisdiction of the TAC is. And related, the second recommendation is to decouple the mandate from the implementation of Northern Rockies' 5-year regional tourism strategy and shift the committee to an advisory role. A potential mandate could be the purpose of the committee is to provide Northern Rockies Regional Municipality with regular and ongoing insight, input, and perspective on tourism-related matters. What goes into this mandate is something that we're here to explore today, and we'll certainly get a chance to with the next slide that has the question. The third recommendation is to draft and include specific objectives for the committee to pursue over its term as part of the refreshed terms of reference. And the fourth recommendation around mandate objectives and guiding principles is to set and explain guiding principles that align with the values of NRRM for the committee. So really making sure that there is that link back to the regional municipality in terms of what the committee is tasked with taking forward. With those recommendations, the question that I'll put before all of you today, and I've opened the floor, curious to your input and feedback, is what insight, value, and support are council members looking for the committee to provide? So in other words, what type of supports, what type of advice, what areas can the Tourism Action Committee or the Tourism Committee, I'll start referring to it, bring the most value based on what you're looking for? So the recommendations are there on the left-hand side, and then the question is on the right-hand side. And I'll open the floor and curious to hear from all of you in terms of the insight, value, and support that you're looking for the committee to provide.
Okay, council, we're on the spot. There's the question. Anybody have any? Go ahead.
I would like the committee to kind of have a feel of the pulse of what needs we need to be pursuing as council. What support do we need to be soliciting to help tourism grow in our area? Like, hopefully they'll have the insight and knowledge of, you know, the tourism community and what kind of things we need to help promote it. Where can we support them when we go to the province? What actions, what granting, what can we do?
Thank you for that. And there's I'll just add, there's some recommendations which actually are very much connected to that comment. So I'll highlight those, but thank you. That's a good starting point.
Mayor?
Okay, I'll jump in. I mean, this committee was created before our term, so I wasn't really, I'm not really aware of all of the mandate or the expectations of this committee. So, but I did read some of the history, and I see they went from an advisory committee to an action committee, and that makes sense when you were putting together the plan that you would have an advisory committee because you'd be looking for input from the public, and then of course every committee that's advisory wants to do some stuff, and so I could see how it evolved potentially to an action committee where they were expecting to get some stuff done. But I think it's really our role is to try to grease the wheels when it comes to industries that we've got and economic development in our community. And the way things have been going, this is certainly one of the tourism is going to be a pillar. until we're able to get our resource industry back, tourism has been and will, I think, continue to bring new dollars into the community. So having a committee who understands tourism, is there from a wide variety of the market or the tourism industry, will help to feed information to us so that we can grease the wheels in the right places. If guide outfitting is the way we should be going and where we should be spending, any of our time with advocacy, that's where we should be doing it. If it's a combination of that or a wide spread of parks and camping, and then we should be hearing from that. I mean, we've got our staff, we've got ourselves, but it's nice to have a group of people who really have their finger on the pulse. So for me, that's what I'm interested in hearing. What's happening out there? Is it ecotourism? And we've got some of the most pristine country in the world in these 80,000 square kilometers that we have, and if that's where we should be going, then we should be hearing about that. And so I would hope that this committee would feed that type of information to us on a fairly regular basis, so that it's always in our face is the wrong word, but it's always there for us to be considering. That's my thought.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Mayor. Anybody else? Nope. Yeah, like I was thinking along the same things, like looking for recommendations around what is needed to expand our tourism. Like, we have the land base for ecotourism, but we don't necessarily have the service providers, or I don't think we do. I could be wrong. Like, are there operators out there that are interested in expanding ecotourism, or like that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for, like where, and then how do we get there? Like, so yeah, sort of like the mayor said, like recommendations around where we should be headed. Like we all think, we'd really like to get some of the traffic that is flowing through our community to stay in our community. So maybe there's some ideas, like we all have ideas around maybe how that could happen, but what's the plan? Like in my years, I don't know that I've seen a lot of that actually done, like completed, like, like Rib Fest, right? So that's an event that we can now start building upon, and maybe other kinds of events. And there's been other ideas out in the community. And it would be great, like if council had an idea, say for like I don't know, some kind of a contract position around encouraging events and AGMs and those types of things. Like, would that be a good idea? Let's just pretend that council thought that might be a good idea. We could go back to the Tourism Action Advisory Committee and solicit their feedback. So that's another thing, is just to bounce ideas off of, right? That's kind of what I was thinking.
And a lot of these comments are great, and they'll connect actually to communications and reporting structures, and there's specific recommendations to that. So I don't want to miss that connection. I'll call it out now. But just to sum up, what I'm hearing from all of your input is really recognizing the value that a tourism committee would bring on the advice front, specifically around direction for tourism, priorities and opportunities around tourism, ideas for growth, as well as a body that is there to ideate with council, or to really confirm or help inform the way that certain initiatives or priorities are shaping up. I think that that's what I'm hearing largely from the end. Actually, something not to miss is a body that is representative of the tourism industry across the municipality. So it was said several times that the committee should be people who have a finger on the pulse of what is happening in and around tourism. So I think definitely picking that up. Before moving on to the next set of recommendations, just curious to touch on the guiding principles and objective side of things. Because we know that part of the reality in terms of how committees operate is that they need to always have that connection back to the body that is creating them, the municipality and regional council in this case. So curious as to what type of, let's say, guiding principles you would highlight for a tourism committee. In other words, how would you see a tourism committee coming together and operating as a partner to council and as a communicator with council effectively and efficiently? We'll get a chance to dig deeper into that, but I'll touch on it now around guiding principles, just in terms of the principles to guide the committee's initiatives and activities.
Well, I think the first one that springs to mind for me is inclusive of the geographic area.
Yeah, representative.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, representative of the geographic area. That's that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
concept.
And the different I don't know what you call them, phases or portions of the industry. I mean, it's a big industry. There's lots of different things that can happen, and so we should not only should be representative geography wise, but also representative of the industry itself.
Thank you. And actually, that I'll take that as a perfect segue into the next set of recommendations, which is around membership and expectations. So that kind of leads us in this direction. The first recommendation here being to set membership to be made up of up to 9 geography-based voting members that have direct ties to one or more of the industry-specific areas. So here we're seeing that comment echoed in terms of geographical and industry-specific representation. Within the makeup of the committee, we recommend to include at least 1 non-voting representative from regional council and continue to be supported by 1 non-voting dedicated municipal staff person. The third recommendation is to develop a diversity matrix to support the terms of reference and member recruitment to ensure that there is the best geographic and skills and knowledge representation mix in the membership of the committee. And the fourth, and final recommendation around membership and expectations being to expand and clearly articulate the expectations in the revised terms of reference to include expectations around participation, reporting, professionalism, communications, ambassadorship, and any other areas in part that we identify through this conversation, but that we've also gathered through the input and feedback. So with these 4 recommendations, the question to consider is what, and we've touched on this a bit, but what does regional council expect from the committee in terms of membership? And I'll echo some of what you've already shared, but hearing that part of the expectation for membership is to have a representative committee, both in terms of geography and tourism sub-industries or subsectors. Any other expectations around membership? Maybe we'll take it 1 sub-point at a time.
I do have a question about if this was to move forward with a representative from regional council, why would that be non-voting?
So thank you for the question. Our perspective is that within the committee structure, we know that the council member that is part of the committee would have an opportunity to vote on matters that are tourism related when it comes to regional council procedures and formal meetings. And so that would be the role of the regional council representative within the committee would really be there to be a touch point, contact person, someone who is able to participate in informed conversation, but from our perspective, to avoid any potential bias or around political influence when it comes to the committee's votes. The council member would be there to participate in discussion, would not be voting, to abstain from potentially swaying vote one way or the other, but the council member retains their vote for regional council matters.
Okay, thanks.
And if there's any other questions, also open to chatting those through. We have the time together.
Seeing none here.
Okay. So I'll jump into kind of the next subpoint. If there's any expectations or hopes around membership, please let me know. And actually, before jumping into this one, I'll probe a little bit. Curious in terms of existing committees that are operating within the municipality, what additional considerations in terms of gender parity, First Nations representation would just be important for us to keep in mind when developing something like a diversity matrix and setting forth the direction for membership for the committee. Any direction or additional input council members can provide?
Well, I'd just like to say that, you know, I think we've all been interested in making sure that we're inclusive, you know, across the spectrum of our municipality. But I think reality dictates that we're pretty happy if we get anybody. Just saying. You know, I don't, you know, if I wouldn't want to turn somebody away, you know, if the committee is short, just because we're not necessarily representative. I think if the principle is we're representative of our culture and our communities across the breadth of it, and the people come forward, and you know, and if we're lucky enough to you know have enough to select from, then I guess that sort of thing would kick in. But really, just making sure that we've got enough people that are prepared to sit our committees is, for me, the most important point.
Thank you. Appreciate also the reality check on just local conditions as well, and availability of people to participate. Now, when it comes to, maybe we can consider some of the expectations around conduct, and it was mentioned that the committee could serve a role a bit of as a bouncing board of ideas. Curious as to what expectations committee members would have when engaging with a committee as a unit, but also with committee members as representatives of tourism spread out across the municipality. Any reflections that you can share on the conduct, type of communication as well?
You're asking us if we expect people to communicate in a respectful manner? Like, are those the kind of things we're looking for?
I think that, I mean, that is one. It's that one should be hopefully standard, and I think it's something we all hope for. But it's in case there's any specificities in terms of your experience with other committees, things that you would hope to see carried through to a committee like this one, or done differently as well. But yes, that's the type of input if there's something along those lines.
I mean, I think it's like our other committee structures, like the committee decides, like if you pick a number, 2 or 3 meetings without a valid reason or without a reason, or then, you know, your membership is readdressed or those fundamental things. But it hasn't been my experience on any of the committees that I sit on that we've had to outline specific behaviors that are acceptable and specific behaviors that aren't acceptable. I mean, I suppose there's some sort of blanket statement in there about respectful behavior, but yeah.
Are you asking if this is Leslie Dickey speaking here, if we agree with number 6, which is expectations, or are we trying to expand on that, or are we in agreement with those expectations?
I think trying to expand on it, see if there's any that you disagree or you have questions around. I think it's worth talking about, but yeah, definitely around expectations around participation, which I believe that was the deputy mayor who just provided input in terms of the committee can decide membership. But yeah, any that you agree or want to explore further.
For anybody.
In the bigger picture. Oh, if I may.
Oh, yeah, if I can just, I'll draw council's attention to page 8 on the agenda package, which is where Councillor Dickey was speaking. that the expectations are recorded. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, so I want to say in the bigger picture, we've had some brief conversations with respect to a code of conduct for council members, and I think we're trying to work towards that, and I think that any of our committees would reflect that same document once it's completed.
Thank you. And knowing that it's something that's in the works, just curious if there's any information around the timeline for that, in terms of something down the horizon.
I'd have to
On the
turn to-
horizon.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Now,
But I think if council is drawn their attention to number 6, I don't think that there's anything there that we wouldn't agree with. If the committee feels that it's necessary to have that clearly addressed in the terms of reference, then I don't think there's anything there that we would discourage.
is there
Councilor Dickey?
anything? Oh, sorry,
Oh.
go ahead.
Yeah, just excuse me, Councillor Dickey would like to speak, please.
I have one more recommendation on number 5 with reporting, because we have
Mhm.
like we have 0 ways to communicate with the community members, like is really limited now that we don't have our newspaper. So I think reporting and communication, whether it's, I think more than annually with the regional council, but with the community members, is what is this advisory group doing? Like a report somehow to the community members of what they're finding, where they're seeing gaps, what the recommendations are, but communication is a real key issue here, because we don't have a lot of channels to use other than social media. And if you don't have social media, the only other option is printed copies.
Mhm.
So I think in the terms of reference or the planning for this, there needs to be a real clear communication piece.
Thank you, Councilor Dickey. And you're actually getting us into the next area, which is called communications and reporting. So we'll definitely explore recommendations specific to that. Before moving on to those recommendations, I just want to probe a little bit around representation, and we've definitely acknowledged geographic representation. Curious to ask here, when it comes to geographic representation, knowing that it is a large area, the regional municipality covers a lot of ground, are there any areas that would be particularly important to be represented on a committee that is a tourism committee? I know it sounds maybe like an obvious question, but I'll put it out there in case there's any perspective on areas that might be underrepresented and would be important to really account for and make additional effort to recruit from, or if there's areas that are quite significant in terms of population base, tourism activity, that would just be good to similarly prioritize.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Enox?
I think we need to include FNFN, Prophet River, Toad River. These communities put on events such as, like in our town, we had Rib Fest. They have, the men's hand game tournaments. Prophet River just bought the old Don Beatty Ranch. They do culture camps out there. I think to draw them all together and share information and share events that are going on in all of our communities that we're close with, I think would be a positive for sure.
Great.
Can
Thanks.
we expand the Toad River to up highway representation?
Yeah. And then I wondered if we wanted to have somebody from the not-for-profit sector represented. And then I also wondered if we wanted from our cultural groups or our golf course, like these organizations put on events that could draw in tourists and have tourists stay that extra night if they know, right? So I'm not sure whether the not-for-profit sector is represented right now on the previous committee or not.
I believe only through the Chamber of Commerce, being an industry association, or a
Yeah.
grouping, but that's a very good point. So I'm glad I probed. Any other points around representation?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Councillor Enox?
I'm just saying I'm part of TAC and I kind of bounce between the two hats from
Okay.
our society and council.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry. Apologies, Councilor Enox. Yes, I forgot the double hat that you wear. In terms now, if we consider recommendations specific to communications and reporting, this is where I believe it was Councillor Dickey who made the comment around the attention that needs to be paid for how communication back and forth is taking place between the committee and council and community more broadly. So the recommendation on our end is to establish and ensure that a formal process and schedule of communication between the committee and regional council is followed. And the process that we're recommending is that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality staff person, and if available, the committee chair who would be elected by the committee, will report to regional council at the next scheduled council meeting after a recommendation is made at a formal committee meeting. So to put it differently, if the committee makes a recommendation, then there would be a presentation to council at the next council meeting. The second point around communications and reporting is that the municipality staff person and committee chair, if available, will report biannually to regional council to provide general insights, input, and perspective shared by the committee. So this touches on those updates twice a year around what the committee has been up to, any insights that they've gathered, any initiatives that they're identifying are priority, which should also be shared with council via official recommendations in line with the first sub-bullet point of the recommendation. The third point is for the staff person and committee chair, if available, to report to regional council at the request of regional council. So having that knowledge that it is a back and forth and there may be a matter within regional council that they want to hear from directly from the committee. So keeping that line open. And the last point around reporting and communications is that the municipal staff person will report back to the committee any tourism related news, information, or updates coming out of regional council meetings. So similarly, the municipal staff person would be playing a liaison role in terms of communicating between the committee and council, which is the role that they're currently playing, but it would be kind of more directly spelled out when it comes to the terms of reference and the structure of the committee. With this process in mind, the question that I'm curious to discuss with you all is what are your expectations for communications with and reporting from the committee? I know that one was already shared, that it needs to be with council and broader community as well, in terms of having the facility for community members to learn about what the committee is undertaking, what it's achieved thus far. I think that's a point that relates directly to this. Curious if there's any other thoughts around expectations or ideas for how the committee could communicate more effectively with council, and council could also communicate back with the committee.
So I have a point. It's Lorraine. In terms of the minutes, so currently we get the minutes somehow, I think. We used to get them delivered to us, but now we have to go somewhere, like online somewhere. And I have to admit that I used to read them all the time until it got moved to, I now need to remember to look for the minutes and then actually go and get the minutes. And so that process for me is a little bit onerous, and I have to admit it falls off my desk because I don't have a notation that the committee is meeting on such and such a date and I should start looking for the minutes after that. So, and I think for the public too, like once it, if the minutes are more accessible, I know it doesn't solve everybody's communication ways and means, but I don't think that there isn't going to be one way to communicate. I think we're going to have to take several different methods, but it could start in making the minutes a bit more accessible, both for council and for the public. And I mean, some of the recommendations can be included in the Bear Pit that we publish, and then, through our social media processes. But I think it all starts with those minutes. Or council's representative on this committee can report back to council in their council report after every meeting. They can simply give us the highlights. Counselor Andrews?
And to further that, as mentioned before, it's harder to find people to go onto these committees. If we have the council report working, I don't feel the need to have a biannual sit down with the committee chair. I find that lots of these committee chairs, they can do, and they'll have good reports and we can have good, but to have them sit down with us twice a year, even once a year when we're getting, reports coming back to us on what's going on, I just seem it's a little extra step that wouldn't need to be done. When we can call them in if there's something we need to talk to them with, that's part of the communication. I don't think we should force them to come in every once or twice a year.
So I'll just recap some of what's been shared because a lot of good points have been made. Definitely around the minutes and having them be more accessible both directly to council members as well as the broader public, highlighting specific, let's say, achievements or recommendations via official channels like the Bear Pit, and then the idea to also have the council member who's on the committee report back to regional council via their report. And then the point around perhaps biannual reporting back from the chair isn't needed if regular updates are coming in. So having that as more of an optional and part of the council ability to call on the committee.
Yeah,
I'll
and I
pause
think the onus should be on the council representative that if they're unable to make a meeting, then they let the alternate know so that the alternate can be prepared to attend and then report back to council after every meeting.
Thank you. There's one point I would like to probe on around the minutes and how they're presented back to council. Knowing that this is something that at times there's different structures that are attached to minutes, curious if there's any perspective and experience around ways in which minutes can be presented back in a way that lend themselves to be particularly easy to engage with, or just, any past examples that you have, any hopes that you have in terms of how a committee minute would be coming to all of you. Definitely something worth exploring a bit.
Okay, Jaylene?
I think it just comes down to an internal process of how we create committee agendas and minutes. So we have a tool that we use for all of our council related agendas and minutes, which I think the notification process of that availability works well. And it just, for multiple reasons, we've just maintained a manual process for committee related agendas and minutes. So it would just take some additional training internally to basically prepare committee related agendas and minutes in the same tool, and it would follow the same process of notification when a set agenda is produced or a set of minutes is available for a draft.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've seen it a couple of different ways. I've seen in other organizations that I've been around, I've seen minutes coming in as part of a consent agenda, or they're coming in as part of correspondence for review. So those are a couple other ways that I've seen minutes presented.
And with the use of AI now too, it doesn't have to be a supremely onerous undertaking to record the minutes. If the meeting is recorded, then AI can generate, and then it can just be reviewed before it's released for accuracy. But I'm on several committees using AI right now, and the minutes have been quite well done.
I would just offer that there are minutes and they're publicly available once the committee's adopted them. But I think to Acting Mayor Gerwing's point, they have to be sought out so that the notification process of when they're available is maybe something that council's been missing. So we can, it's just an adjustment to our internal process to make that happen more easily.
Thank you. Thank you for that context. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, I'm also taking notes. So if you see my eyes straying from the camera, I know Krista's also supporting with note taking. Now the last set, or the last area for recommendations is focused on term and meeting schedule for the committee itself. So the first recommendation here being to set a fixed 2-year term for committee members with membership succession being planned within this period. And we're also recommending that there's an interview or a conversation component as part of committee appointment process. I'm going to make the connection here to the local realities, which have been flagged as well in terms of sometimes volunteers' participation can be limited. So obviously this recommendation is something to take in terms of what would fit best for ensuring that there is participation and representation within the committee. The second recommendation is to adjust the meeting schedule to be on a bi-monthly basis. So reducing the number of formal meetings from 10 to 12 per year, which is currently, they meet on an almost monthly basis, to 6. So these would be formal committee meetings. Complementing those formal committee meetings, we also recommend that there should still be the availability for the committee to choose to organize, but not require members to participate in additional meetings with broader tourism stakeholders in the regional municipality. These meetings would be held virtually unless it's otherwise decided and they coincide with activations like a Tourism Days initiative. So would be decided by the committee, and the committee would determine a schedule that suits the members. To provide a bit of extra context, these would be informal committee meetings. They would be open to tourism industry members more broadly and would provide an opportunity to have group discussion, encourage connections across the tourism industry in the regional municipality without being formal meetings that would require the attendance of all committee members. So kind of our recommendation is looking to have formal meetings be on a bi-monthly basis, and then potentially in between formal committee meetings, the committee also being able to organize informal meetings with tourism industry members. So
Mayor Fraser?
Yeah, thanks. So I like that idea of the formal and informal meetings that, you know, to Councillor Dickey's point, those informal meetings might be, you know, that opportunity to reach out to the general public as well as other tourism operators who don't necessarily set the committee. So yeah, I like that approach.
Thank you. I think with that, we can take your comment as our segue into the question, but are there any additional perspectives on the recommended term and meeting schedule? I know that some of it is quite, say, detail in terms of frequency, but curious if there's any additional considerations that you would flag when structuring the committee and how often it's meeting and the nature of the meetings as well.
For me, I think I would like the committee members' perspective on it. Right, because like it's good to have like a base, like this is what we're thinking, but as a committee, like what do you think? Like we're
And-
making a decision for people and that's going to decide whether they are going to participate or not. Then my other thought around informal versus formal meetings. So informal meetings, are we still requiring staff participation at those meetings? And then I would just add on to that, do we have the capacity for that? Just some things to consider as we're moving forward.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
is your
And-
hand up again or just?
No, I think I just didn't lower it. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Yep, that's okay.
And if I can just make a comment around the committee's perspective, because this is certainly a point that we discussed with active and current committee members. And there is a high interest in meeting regularly so continuing to meet almost on a monthly basis. A recommendation around meeting bi-monthly is there's an interest in connecting regularly, but being able to connect on matters that may be more exploratory in conversation, may benefit from perspective of broader industry members as well. So having the bi-monthly, let's say, staggered types of meetings would provide facility for that broader engagement with community and industry members, while still keeping a fairly regular meeting schedule for the committee that doesn't rely on monthly and then adding informal meetings on top of a monthly schedule. So it's definitely a comment that we've considered as well.
Councillor Andrews?
I I like the idea and I can understand why the members are looking for something like that as well. My concern would be on the note-taking minutes of the informal meeting, how, like, there's got to be a communication back at least to their bi-monthly meetings to have, so everybody can get back on the same page again, which I would imagine happens anyways, but I guess we should write it down.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other comments here.
And I think with that, that takes us through the set of recommendations that we've provided. And just to kind of reiterate something I shared at the beginning, based on these recommendations, we're going to move forward with refreshing and developing materials for the Tourism Action Committee. Something that we would have gathered from the recommendations made in the staff report is that part of it is also to change the name. So with a changing mandate from action to advisory, it would switch to a Tourism Advisory Committee. So in terms of those next steps, that's what we're moving into right now based on the input and feedback you provided. That'll inform the details that go into the refreshed terms of reference, the diversity matrix and the components within it. And these are things that, as Krista mentioned, will be in front of you for review and approval at the next council meeting. So we're moving through the process of developing those now and giving them more detail and body with Krista's support. On the screen, you can see my contact details at the beginning, as well as the rest of the team, Trevor and Caroline. And just to say thank you for the time today, before I say kind of official thank yous and goodbyes, just in case there's any additional comments, something that you may not have been able to share across our conversation, or something that actually relates to a recommendation discussed earlier, but you want to make sure that you have that we have time to consider it now.
Yeah, I have something to add. I'm not sure if this appears in the older terms of reference, but I'm on another committee. And we have the ability to give an honorarium for somebody, a committee member that needs child minding. I think we've only used it once or twice, but it might be something that this committee would look at in case we have somebody that would like to participate, but they need some assistance in child minding costs.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. It's very important. And actually around that, any other additional considerations to facilitate access and participation from different members across the regional municipality? I think an honorarium is a great idea if there's anything else. Councillor Souls?
Yeah, I apologize for coming in late and missing the introductory remarks, but one of the things that I see is one of the things that when we start talking about the committee and who it consists of and aiming for primary for industry, already connected industry partners, participants and so on. My own experience around tourism has, I find that a lot of what I do in life, I find is really interesting, more so to other people than to me. And one of the things that how do we also tap into identifying that which is in our region that is not currently a tourism focused industry or activity or so on, but to actually bring it into that network somehow. Like I cannot think of 3 or 4 things that would fall into that right away that are not used to seeing themselves as tourist related. And yet if the committee were able to have the capacity to reach out into the community to try to make those attachments, that would be fabulous.
Oh, Councillor Andrews?
I was just thinking along those lines, I'd be interested if the committee would be interested in having youth representation.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Just a question back to the committee.
I mean, yeah, council could also work to identifying those non-traditional tourism opportunities and then provide that information to the committee for their exploration and advice on how we might move forward or not
Mhm.
with any one of those ideas. So that's something that we need to remember too, right? Like we can be driving, also just not receiving. Because I think you're right, like, you know, there's farming, there's vermicompost, like there's reasons to stay in the area all throughout the region, right? But how are we sharing that information with the people driving up and down the highway?
Mhm.
Mayor, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. I had one more thought that I think might fit into the objectives bit that you had going there, and that's the idea of potential barriers, I guess, that tourism operators might be running up against it. I think that's one of the things I certainly would like to hear from the committee, if there are any barriers to moving tourism forward at the provincial level or federal level, because certainly lobbying is something that we do, and understanding what those barriers are will help us to formulate whatever our lobbying effort might be.
Great.
Thank you. And I want to comment on all of the points there. So thank you very much for the additional reflection, both in terms of setting up a committee that is accessible and I would say attainable for a variety of different people. Definitely great to hear the consideration of youth representation, and just to give you all an idea of where these comments would be factored in terms of the materials that we're developing. There's a lot that you shared that will inform the development of the diversity matrix in terms of just the specific points that in an ideal, let's say, diversified membership would be accounted for. Again, noting that it's things to strive for and ideally achieve, but we recognize that if someone is interested, they shouldn't necessarily be turned away because something that they represent is already covered. But this will give a lot of direction to that. And then definitely the other point I wanted to just comment on it again is I really appreciated hearing the comment that for any non-obvious tourism opportunities or potential initiatives, these are things that council can also call on the committee directly on for feedback and perspective, as well as I think through the facilitation of the non-official committee meetings, those are open to industry more broadly, community members as well. That would be a good space to, on a more consistent basis, have the opportunity to explore and exchange ideas around things that, although maybe related to tourism, are not as obvious. And that's something that we certainly recognize. I said at the beginning of my introduction that we work within and beyond travel and tourism, and it's that beyond that at times brings the most interesting opportunities, because they are things that are truly unique to the context in which they're being explored. So with that, just want to thank you all again for your time and the input you've provided today. If there's any additional ideas that you have, either more generally in terms of a tourism committee or specifically to any of the recommendations that I provided just an overview for today, please feel free to reach out over email directly or through Krista as well, as we'll just continue to build out the materials and have them ready for your next council meeting.
Great. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of your evening.
Perfect. Thank you. You all.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night. Perfect. So that takes us to 6.1, Committee of the Whole Report, number 19, Tourism Action Committee Refresh Discussion. And you would find that on page 3 of your agenda package. So for discussion, Krista?
I don't have anything else. I just want to make sure that you had a primer to set up for this meeting. So that's all.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, I'm quite confident that council has read the report, and just opening up the table for any discussion that you might have. Councillor Andrews, thank you.
I brought it up during the whole discussion
Yeah.
presentation. I think we covered everything that I had noted.
Okay, thanks. All right. Anybody have anything else? I agree a lot with the recommendations that they've put forward. I don't have anything that I don't necessarily agree with, so don't have much to add. Mayor, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is the comment that you'd brought up already, that a lot of this needs to be run by the committee itself, right? In terms of reference, they should be involved in that, in that development of it. And so, we can think what we want it to be, but they'll have ideas with respect to what they want to achieve on it as well. And so I think we shouldn't close it off until we have that discussion with the committee members that are there.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Okay, seeing no more discussion, we'll move. Oh, there was no additions. So public news media question and answer period. Is there anybody online that has any questions or comments? Okay, we will have Miss Vandersteen come up, turn the mic on and give us your thoughts.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, Council, Mayor Fraser. Just wanted to add a little bit of perspective. The Tourism Action Committee has met and we did have some pretty in-depth conversations about this. So certainly haven't been left out of the process.
Oh, good.
Right. And around just maybe a little more clarification around meetings. So up till this point, the Tourism Action Committee has been meeting every month. We'll sometimes miss a meeting in the summer and we've struggled once or twice with quorum, but when we discussed the bi-monthly thought, the committee, many members of the committee really appreciate the conversation. And so didn't necessarily want to lose that. And of course, I can't speak to staff capacity, whether or not that can continue to happen on a monthly basis. But that was where the idea of the formal and the informal meetings came from, because there's so much value to just that open discussion, that we didn't want to lose it, but that it sometimes gets in the way of the formal meeting. So just wanted to give council a little bit of background on kind of how we participated in the process and how we ended up here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so seeing no more questions or comments, I will adjourn this meeting.